thanks for that Prime Gaming sub. We see you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is Prime Time. Our title sponsor for the SPL, of course, Prime Gaming. And you just saw there the cool games that you can get with Prime this month, but make sure that you're getting the most out of that membership with all the other exclusive content that Prime Gaming has to offer. And if you're not a Primer yet, it might be the time to become one, because you can get free Twitch subs, free games, free content, and free Amazon delivery. There's a couple more in there, but that's I'm going to leave those to you to discover for yourselves, because we have some pressing things to talk about, Mifflin. And, well, speaking of pressing, these two teams, the Tartarus Titans and Camelot Kings, don't seem to be in a rush today. Very slow-paced.
That's good.
You could, yeah, thank you. I thought you just kind of sat there looking at me.
That is good. You're right. These are two teams that are a little bit more late game slanted. I think that the Camelot Kings less so than the Tartarus Titans, which is interesting to say. Generally, I think the Kings will get involved around the 15-minute mark rather than the 20-minute mark. They'll also be the initiators at times. The Tartarus Titans fully in line with the counterpunch style of play. Sorry it took me so long to respond.
That's
it was
fine.
just such a good
I'm
good
just gonna
bit.
I'm gonna just go off the assumption that you were just really proud of me.
I was.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that'll do. I'm okay with that. But we can go straight into the schedule here for the rest of the day, Mifflin. Obviously, we still got two best-of-threes to contend with, which will be the Camelot Kings and the Tartarus Titans. The winner of this set, of course, will move straight up to that grand finals, which will be taking place tomorrow. The loser will be heading down into that match 35, the best-of-3 tomorrow. So both of these teams, this will be their last set of the day. And the Olympus Bolts will be fighting out to basically see who's going to be in that second match 35 slot. So think of this is the top bracket, that other side, match 34, that's going to be the loser's side of the bracket. This game, this set as a whole, will be our first determiner of who will be going through today.
It is, and a non-elimination match. So if you're a fan of both the Titans and the Jade Dragons and would like to see them match up later on, that is certainly still a possibility in its own right. And, well, I'm thinking the Titans versus the Kings, probably the more pressing of the matter right now, and an incredibly interesting match coming up. I think the Camelot Kings have got a good deal of data on exactly how the Tartarus Titans are looking to play, especially considering that was a pretty calculated set from the Tartarus Titans, and that both matches were played in the exact same style with very similar styles of composition at that. So I'm excited to see whether or not the Camelot Kings have devised a strategy to contend with it, whether or not the Tartarus Titans are bringing a completely different strategy for the Kings. Maybe that was just an anti-Dragons style of play. Either way, curiosity on my end should be echoed by the viewers, and, well, you could just stick around, I suppose. Keep watching.
Yeah, no, I got to agree with you. The Kings, though, they're no slouch to playing their own game, though. They've shown us time and time again today, yesterday, every other time that we've seen them, that they can not only withstand, but come back from just about any amount of a deficit. We saw them, I believe, with a 6,000 gold deficit yesterday. They were still able to dig in their heels and come back. So the Kings definitely not afraid of the Titans coming into this. And I got to echo your sentiment then. If I'm really excited to see what kind of composition the Kings are going to draw out.
Agreed. And the Camelot Kings have got a different style of play. When you talk about like 9-4 and patches of previous, it's, hey, the Camelot Kings aren't exactly getting too active in the early, but they are just out farming everyone on the planet. We're talking 15 minutes in, 0-0 slash line. Somehow the Camelot Kings are up 4,000 gold. So far in every set this week, the Camelot Kings have lost out in the early game. Even in not fighting, it's been a lot of gold going to the opposite team. I believe the Jade Dragons at the 12-minute mark in their last set up against the Kings were up about 3,000 gold at a 0-0 slash line, which is so surprising to see. But in spite of that, the Camelot Kings, time and time again, when allowed to play in that team fight phase, just maneuver the map so incredibly well and are able to either find a pick before going towards an objective or route pathing in. It has been incredibly impressive. I even got a chance eavesdropping. I heard Big Man Ting say, man, we just keep losing the early, but those late game fights work for us. And he's right. I mean, that's as fair analysis as you could give.
And we can potentially ask one of the Camelot Kings here how that's been going, how that's been feeling in the booth, because we're joined now by Aurora from the Titans and, of course, Genetics from the Camelot Kings. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you feeling after your wins today?
Good, yeah. Nice and
Yeah,
fast.
good.
Nice and fast?
Yep.
Fantastic. So I'll kick you off with Mifflin's first question here, Genetics. Obviously, we've seen you've been down pretty much every single start in these games. How has that had kind of like an effect on your mental? Have you guys been feeling pretty good regardless of that?
Well, we don't mean to lose early games. We just suck. We're trying to clean a lot of stuff up, and we do get the late game and win because we're better players, but it's not good to lose every game. So we've been trying to fix stuff, but it's been fine.
Sure. Okay. Well, I mean, hey, if that works out for you, then that's perfectly fine. Aurora, I'm gonna ping pong back and forth from you two. Both of you guys have had extremely long sets of games over the last couple of days. Is that an intentional adaptation for your guys' play style, or is that just a product of 9-5?
I mean, it's good for us that we played a bunch of sets because we needed the practice. So we feel like we're getting better each set, and we're just going to keep trying to improve and keep it up.
Fantastic. And I would go back and forth and ask you guys how you're feeling about this next set, but I'm going to assume confident?
No.
No? Aurora?
Yeah, always.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Go ahead and get back in the booths, get ready for the game.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So there you go. The Titans super confident. The Kings, I'm not sure if they're feeling it.
Well, I mean, you should be. He explicitly told you that he wasn't.
Yeah.
So you should be sure.
Well, I mean, it's British people. It's pure sarcasm.
Is that a British thing?
Yeah, it's a British thing.
So
Sarcasm.
you guys are just like lack confidence or what?
Well, it's a social construct where our main form of humor is self-deprecating, and it's a product of a steady flow of drizzle slowly breaking down your willpower.
Understood. All Brits have no confidence because they've been rained upon too much. Thank you very much, British Ambassador Blazy
You're
Bard,
welcome.
for explaining that cultural
Political
difference.
leader.
Are you?
Yep, that's me.
Understood.
English ambassador to hi-rez,
Okay.
specifically.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And we can see now that the player cams lined up here. Everyone is situated and ready. Now, Mifflin, we've we had a quick conversation there, obviously. Are we expecting to...
Well, you did.
See, we, as in the royal we, me, Aurora, and
Oh, the
Genetics.
royal we, another
Yeah,
Englishism.
of course.
Understood.
Like the royal I.
Understood.
And I'm going to ask the royal you if you think they're going to be drafting similarly to what they have been for the rest of the day, or if you think there's going to be some special adaptations for each other.
Game one is always going to be just a standard selection, I think. You don't really want to show too much of your hand or your targeted selections in the first game of a set. It's whether or not the Tartarus Titans can adjust to what the Camelot Kings are doing and vice versa. So I'm expecting a lot of the same, at least here, the only difference being perhaps some targeted bans.
So potentially seeing some things taken away. I think it would be very smart for the Titans to take away the Chernobog, but actually, King's doing it for them. Netrioid was looking very clean on this pick, but it seems very obvious now that Kings don't want to lean on this Cherno this game.
No, that global presence has equally served the Tartarus Titans. Again, in that first match, it was Oleron plus Apollo and Chernobog for the Titans, just essentially sky policing the entirety of the map. And, well, I think the verbiage we had used on the cast was, wow, that's incredibly cringe, and the Kings seems to agree, so they will go ahead and remove that one. Verbiage, not a word you're used to.
No, that's not a word that I've commonly heard, but the Titans also very commonly banning away these supports here, Yamodra and Ymir, will be the takeaways, and Oleron as well focused down. We've seen so much prevalence from this Oleron in this second week. This meta has really evolved, still maintaining that, I think, Hunter presence that we've come to see from week one, but focusing down now specifically on the Oleron as well.
So the Kings in the first pick position will take Khepri for themselves. Thought maybe we'd see priority over towards Jingwei, but both Aurora and Genetics have had great performances on this pick, and considering the Titans have been going largely single target, Khepri will counter that style of play. Could put the Titans in a position where they play how we saw in Game 2 of the last set, a little bit more in line with standard meta, things like a mage in mid. I suppose that has become more so a unicorn in Smite. We don't see those as often as we once did. But even with that, it's Jingwei and Mercury locked in. Jingwei, just a great lock, doesn't really have any poor matchups, should have some decent semi-global presence, great scaling come late game, as will Mercury. But both Jingwei and Mercury are avid users of the crit style of build, meaning that Spectral Armor will very quickly become a topic of conversation for the Kings, unless we see something a little bit more eclectic from the Tartarus Titans insofar as builds.
We could definitely, and in response to this, we're going to see the
Let's
Bologna
show
come out,
them the
obviously
power
able
of
to counter
magic.
out those auto attackers pretty heavily. The Artemis here as well. And now let's talk about this ESET a little bit, Mifflin, because this is something we've seen in a lot of different roles, only recently one of them being the mid lane.
Yeah, well, generally when the Tartarus Titans take ESET, it is for mid. Paul's played it the most for this team, and will either go towards a full damage style of build. Occasionally we see him look towards Breastplate of Valor in that second or third slot, depending on how threatened he feels by the Camelot Kings. Haven't seen the jungler just yet, presumably, from the Camelot Kings, so not willing to make a statement on whether or not Paul is going to go more so that facilitator role for his team just yet. But what ESET does bring, regardless of role, is objective confirmation. Early objective play, always the name of the game when ESET's on the map. I would argue she's probably one of the few mages and / few gods in the game that can make it easy to look at Gold Fury. Generally, it's Pyromancer first, at around that 10-minute mark. ESET should allow the Titans, if they are able to establish a lead or even establish defensive positioning, to group up on a Gold Fury very early on. And they've already got the burn between Jingwei and Mercury. And they've got the confirmation thanks to this ESET. Whereas the Kings haven't shown their hand just yet. We don't know exactly what their mid laner is going to look like. Could be a secondary hunter if they so choose. Could be a standard mage to try and alleviate some of those pressures and bring some coin tosses back into the meta.
We do know what their mid lane isn't going to look like, though, and that is going to be Nuwa and Kukulkan, both taken away from BMT, things that he played earlier on in the tournament looked very, very good on, especially this Nuwa. The Ola will be picked up here by the Titans, and again, I'll leave it till the last pick to ask you to speculate on where these are going to go, right? Because it's all or
Thank
another
you.
pick that could, you're very welcome, another pick that has been just so varied in its positioning so far. But to answer back here, Mifflin, we've still got a jungler and, well, potentially a mid laner. We don't know where the Artemis is going to go. What are you thinking the Kings are looking at here?
I'd like to see some standard AoE damage. I'm a huge proponent of classical Smite, and I think that AoE follow-up off of any form of CC is just incredibly strong. So standard mages, probably what I'm keeping my eye towards, but considering the meta and how much Smite I've watched over the last couple of weeks, I think we could probably assume it might be another hunter selection. As far as jungle is concerned, I'd like to see something that can burn beads consistently. Khepri and Artemis have got the capacity to do it in their own right, but it's not AoE burn down, except for the Caledonia Boar, but even then, great answers from the Titans should be able to target that out with relative ease. A Bladed Arrow or an auto attack from Mercury and Stray could take out Tusky on their own. And considering Twig has got possibly some of the best Hunbots plays I've ever seen in my life, I would like to see something like that would fit this style of composition very well. Instead, another standard initiator, the Erlong Shen out of the jungle. I'd hypothesize that we'd see Erlong Shen this week, but generally in the Soul lane due to his changes, but Twig seems to disagree, thinks that it's still very good in the jungle, and makes a great argument for it last time we saw it.
For sure. Partnering this up with the Ra, though, not something we've seen, but bit something else that we've seen similar. The Thoth has been a relatively contested pick, and Ra kind of echoes that style in some way. I'm interested into how this Ra is going to be played, especially coming up against this Cabrakan, which is a beautiful cap for this Titans draft.
It is. Cabrakan's got some great matchups against the Kings. Bellona, Artemis, Ra, Erlong Shen, even Khepri, all going to struggle mightily up against those walls. So maybe Phantom Shell, something that the Kings will have to look towards early on, likely in that second Relic slot. Looking at this Titans draft, though, I think it's a little bit interesting in that I'm not 100% certain where each one of these gods are going to go. I think it's pretty clear that Jingwei is slated for the Hunter role, Mercury likely headed for the jungle. ESET and Cabrakan, I think, have some flex potential. You could have Cabrakan mid if we were talking about Benny. We're not, so I'm going to go ahead and assume that it is Cabrakan support with Ull in the Soul lane. ESET holding it down in mid. Historically, Paul has had very good performances on this pick, especially recently today. This is a draft that is really, really strong in the team fight phase, particularly in team fights in the jungle. Having those walls in conjunction with the narrower lanes will make it very difficult for the Kings to maneuver the map. But looking at how the damage rolls through for the Titans, it's still largely single target. You're going to have Mercury, an auto attacker, Ull, who's generally single target in his abilities, Jingwei as well, another auto attacker. So the Kings, in just having Khepri in that first slot, have already mitigated a lot of the strengths of this Titans draft. They're going to have to work through, the Titans that is, 2 lives before they hit pay dirt.
It is still fairly single target on the other side of that, though, as well. But obviously the Titans don't have that similar safety net of the Khepri. In fact, their front line is going to be fairly limited, just Cabrakan holding down that front. So, Mifflin, I got to ask, what's going to be the strategy to mitigate that lack of defense for the Titans?
Well, if it's the Titans, I think you have a conversation about passive play, right? It's not so much that the Titans are initiating their fights, engaging themselves. They're not going to send this Cabrakan in and say, hey, be that primary tank and also set up our kills. It's, hey, let's play safe, and eventually they're going to have to come to us. You have to come to our side of the map to win the game. You have to take our Titan, and that's when the Tartarus Titans are going to start to dig in their heels. It's more so a defensive play style rather than offensive. So I'm thinking a slower pace throughout the early until they can group up as 5.
Well, Mifflin, we're going to have to see in-game the Camelot Kings versus the Tartarus Titan. Let's go to game number 1.
It's just one Titan. There's no more Titans.
Just one, yeah, just
This
one.
is singular. Welcome in to technically the finals, but not the finals, but could be the finals tomorrow. Probably will be the finals tomorrow. I'm going to keep talking until that screen opens up and we go in game, but we're not in there. There we go. We're in row. How are you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
I thought there
You're
was
the
a
one that brought
pause
me out
then.
here.
Wait, is
It
there a
is.
pause?
Wait.
That looked cool.
That's a talent right there. I haven't seen that from Big Man Tings before, but, you know, just a unique talent on his own.
So, a little bit of talk, first of all. This whole idea of triple carries, multiple carries, right?
Don't like it, first of all.
You don't?
No.
Why not?
No, I just like, I'm in the Mifflin camp, or I guess it's his camp. I'll take the camp. It's my camp. Mifflin joined me.
That's
I
right.
like
You're
traditional
talented.
team fights. I like some front line, some back line, a
Yep.
little bit of flanking. That's about it. I like breaking down team fights like that. With these 3 hunters and this, you know, maybe an assassin, maybe a guardian, you kind of just get these really scrappy fights and they're hard to break down. It's just something I'm not used to, and I guess I'm stubborn in that regard.
No, I feel you on that. I will say the one thing I do like about this set specifically is the first pick of Kepri there as well.
Yeah.
Because I feel a lot of, like, if you're going to play multiple carries row, you really need a backline, a guardian, a support that's going to be able to facilitate that and allow those gods to get aggressive. And Kepri's kind of one that does that.
Yeah, he's also one that does well in a traditional team comp
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So if you're going to pick something early and something that you don't want to identify, put all your cards on your table, then you may as well pick something that works with both styles of team play.
And going back to that conversation a little bit more, I mean, the Titans here, a lot of carries, and then you've got a Roar and this Cabrakan. He's really the only traditional frontliner on this composition. And if you get separated from his team here, he is isolated a little bit. Luckily, they do have that E-set for some
that's the one.
CC,
That's
right?
right, yeah.
But that's a lot of pressure on Paul to work well with a Roar here.
A little matchup between the Cabrakan and the Kepri though as well. It can be hard for Genetics to find a pull on that Cabrakan because Cabrakan will still be able to auto attack. So
Yeah.
if Aurora thinks he's about to get pulled by Kepri, he can activate that one and he'll be able to stun Kepri off himself. So a great interaction there as well. And we just saw another interaction there in the dual lane. Aurora able to pop that one, walk straight through those Artemis traps as well. So a great 10th pick I think that was for him.
Well, Warriors at the moment, not really in vogue, I will say. We've seen a bit of King Arthur and some Bologna too that we do have this game. And talking a bit more about that Bologna, good against the ADCs, has, you know, the removal, being able to reduce basic attacks and just nullify them for a second or two can come into play. Early game, it's kind of going as expected in that lane. Bologna will get pressure early, but eventually Ul will one-shot that wave.
Yeah. And then Ula just sits on the tower and farms up. He'll get his Transcendence stacks, no problem. He'll be able to walk into the jungle and farm, no problem. But right now, as you said, Variety able to take that little camp. Well, he didn't even get it, so he's there sitting on that Harpy for a little while and trying to kill it. But he just doesn't have enough damage in the early game right now.
A good question for me, though, Ro, is where do you want to see the junglers start to pressure this game early? Obviously, with a Mercury, you're looking at some lane gank potential.
Yeah.
And then you're also looking at this Erlang Shen, which has the blink available, and he's looking for an invade here towards the blue buff. He'll meet layers around the blue area.
Wins
It's
the
going to be a
1v1.
trade-off between two for now. You say that, but Bologna is on the way too, as Layers starting to lose that trade against Twig, and Solo Troll jumps on in. He's thinking about throwing the axe and will connect, Paul. Now rotating in, as you said. Spirit Ball's big onto Captain Twig, who is now dead for first blood. And this could be number 2, as now Variety's body blocked in place. But not enough basic attacks coming through just yet from the Titans. And Variety's standing and banging, but he's not going to live much longer against the trio. No rotation coming through from elsewhere at all. Surprised we didn't see Big Man Tings do anything else. He is now going for the red, though.
That's the thing. Normally you would expect a mid laner to go to that red buff and do their own red buff, but Paul, you know, thinking outside the box, rotates to that blue buff. A great impact play for him so far. He will fall behind a little bit in the experience, but he definitely saves his team there and is able to pick up 2 kills. That's huge. And that almost reminded me of, I don't know if you remember it, but
The
Variety.
Baskin play? I thought Baskin.
Baskin maybe. Well, that's
In that very troll game,
that's
you know,
a bad
like,
memory. That
oh,
one.
oh, yeah.
No, I was thinking Variety on King Arthur with the old Glad Shield when he almost got that quadra kill.
he's
Like
fighting in the
that's
back
what he
line.
might have been able to do there, but unfortunately, Blona at this stage of the game not as strong as King Arthur used to be.
Do agree with you. We did see, you know, Paul fall behind a bit in farm on the mid lane, but what he did is he facilitated Solo or Troll on this Ul to be a bit further ahead now and support him on that right-hand side. And if anything, helping Mercury get ahead too. Because that was Camelot King's aggression that backfired there.
That was, yeah. And I don't blame Twig. Twig is strong at that point. It's just Paul had a great counter rotation. And I think before that happened, we were talking about where Mercury might be able to gank or where Twig might be able to gank, and he pressures the blue buff. But Mercury, not too many lanes for him to gank here. Maybe he could ult down the mid lane, but I can't imagine he's going to be ulting into an Artemis ball. That's not very fun. And I would imagine Genetics is going to sit around mid come here soon. So Mercury, not too many options available to him unless Solo Troll can get a decent lead here and get some poke going. He's going to force the issue as well.
Oh, great Eagles rally though, away from Variety, avoiding Leia's Sonic Boom coming through there. But you start to see the pressures trying to roll through this solo lane. Again, though, it's a Bologna. Not the easiest one for those two to bring down, especially when he can kind of just stack Fizz Prots for the most part.
Yeah, he can safely as well, and he can probably stack a little bit of Fizz Prots into a Spectral as well, so being extra tanky. But what a reaction from Variety there. Just out of the corner of his eye, sees a Mercury, and if you're experienced playing against Mercury, you know what he's about to do, ult down that lane. So Variety, not even with a well-angled ult, he just, as long as he gets that CC immunity off and gets out of danger, he's completely fine there. So what a reaction from him.
Do wonder if we see Twig maybe take the foot off the gas a little bit after that first failed rotation over there on the right-hand side.
Understandable.
But in doing so, doesn't that really release the pressure the Titans should have on them based off this composition they've got?
It does, but it's hard to get up the confidence after a big moment like that. Maybe Big Man Tings can use his level lead to try to force something and make up for that rotation that Paul had. So maybe they're able to get some mid camps, but Big Man Tings going to go back and get some stacks right now.
Yeah, he's going to have that Warlock staff online now. And Warlock's back in the meta a little bit more often now, mainly because, well, everyone's already got health row now, so why not stack more health on top?
Yeah, we're all stacking items anyway. We've got a Book of Thoth, we've got Devourer's Gauntlets, we've got Transcendence, you know, so, and Gauntlet of Thieves now as well. So if everyone else is stacking and everyone else is having a slow early game, I may as well. And then, you know, once they're stacked, full stacks of these items, they are stronger than the regular items. So if you can avoid the downside of them and just get the wins, that's great.
Yeah, it used to be once upon a time we'd talk about how quickly you had to stack up, do more Warlock
make
staff
it worth it,
to make it worthwhile. This day and age, though, realistically, you've got a bit of wiggle room in this early mid game there to find that farm and catch up. Big Man Tings then a level ahead over Paul, and that is because of that rotation to the early game solo lane that we saw. But in doing so, he has allowed Layers to find a bit of a lead there in the jungle over Captain Twig. As we go back to watching Variety and SOT battle, I don't think we'll see many deaths until junglers really turn up here.
Yeah, but I can't imagine Layers wants to come back as well. He's seen Variety with the quick reactions. Variety's only getting tankier, so unless Solo's Troll's damage can keep up, which I can't imagine it can, because a tank item just generally stronger than a damage item in terms of, you know, kills in a 1v1 scenario, which is why you'll always see in a duel game, for example, at least one tank item on the enemy. So maybe Aurora is the one to group up with Layers and try to force a kill. I think Aurora has a good matchup into Ra and the Artemis on Netroid. So maybe if he can get a blink, he has the blink early, so if he can get a blink and then wall behind the target that he's going on, and Mercury ult straight into that wall, and they can try to trap them in.
Well, keeping an eye on builds as well. Talking about Aurora and that comeback and going for the Spirit's Robe early on here. We've seen a lot more of this just lately. What's the reason for it, Ro, in your opinion?
A lot of this meta is about the carries and how much damage they are doing. Everyone thinks, well, everyone is right to think that hunters are just killing everybody, so you need something to make you live. If you're a frontliner getting pulled by a Khepri, for example, you need to live through that pull. So if Spirit Robe is enough to do that for him, then it's great. Not only that, but you know, if you've read the next patch notes, these objectives, Gold Fury and Pyromancer and stuff like that, are doing a decent amount of magical damage. So just buying a Sovereignty at the start still makes you squishy to those objectives. So a little bit of both protections helps in that regard as well.
Yeah, once upon a time I'd be like, well, there's no health in that though, right? It would hurt you, but I guess with the health changes,
that's right.
It's allowed them to, you know, option up a couple of different scenarios here. As Variety now trading out with SOT on the right-hand side over the Tomaku. And now Twig back on the offensive a little bit, stepping into the enemy jungle a little bit, placing some wards down. But the pace hasn't really changed now.
No.
Titans quite comfortable with where they're sat at the moment with that kill on the right-hand side. It's slowed down Twig. And then now we start to see these supports rotate out of that duo lane.
Yeah, and that's probably just going to slow things down further. With a Khepri in the middle lane, he'll be able to get that ult off and play around his squishy target, that is Ra. So I can't imagine we'll see too much action in there. I want to see Layers try to get, you know, watch where this Khepri goes and go to a different lane and try to find a sneaky ult. Maybe Aurora can out-rotate this Khepri as well, get a good blink ult and things like that, and try to get some action going in that regard. But honestly, both of these teams, Titans and Kings, they're more than happy to take it to the late game.
We're not going to see a double stack E-set in the mid lane, are we?
We might, because he can go into a Boomba's Hammer later, and that's what some E-sets I've been seeing have been doing. It is a great scaling item. Well, it's great at level 20, and if you're going to get to level 20 regardless, because Kings are going late regardless, you may as well build that. So he's going to have a lot of base power. I imagine he'll have a little bit of percentage. Penny will get a little bit from Warlock Staff as well. He might even go to a Polynomicon, a Book of the Dead, who knows. But once he gets that Boomers Hammer online, if he chooses to go for that, it will be very, very strong.
Both Hunters in a very similar situation here at the moment. Looks like Cyclone's been a little bit ahead in terms of those stacks over Netroid in the dual lane, but both working towards that Wind Demon we've seen so much of. I mean, attack speed, crit,
everything
you know,
want, isn't it?
what else could you ask for? Jeez, I mean,
they're spoiled these
item.
days.
I know.
They used to be able to go crit or kins. Now they get both. A bit of everything.
I gotta say though, I'm kind of excited to see the Hunters be like a focal point for a minute. It's been a while, in my opinion, where you get to late game and go, well, now it's the Hunters' time to shine. And having a standout Hunter player on your team is kind of important, I would say.
It is. Normally, you know, because I've coached for a long time, and a lot of what I wanted from my Hunters...
No. Really?
What I wanted from my Hunters players were just consistency. I didn't need them to be star players.
And you had Barra. Jeez, dude, you were screwed from day one, weren't you?
He is consistent.
No, he is. On Sol and Jingwei.
That's right. Well, those are consistent gods. We love a little bit
the only
of
two I can
Jingwei
remember him playing for. Yeah, no, I'm joking. Right inside, though, contest around those Harpies won't be there for Twig at the tail end to pick those up as Layers continues his one-level lead over Captain Twig in the jungle. Greater Scorpion being looked at the moment. And a
trade, I think.
Can't really do too much there.
Yeah, not too much action. Maybe they want to aggress for the other one. Doesn't seem like Twig is feeling that confident. All we've seen him step to so far was that blue buff, and that did not go well for him. So since then, he's just been sat back. I imagine he's going to get a little bit of defensive items online. When he played Erlang Shen against the Bolts, he was able to find big blink ults later in the game, so that might be what he's itemizing towards. Blink into 4 people, make sure he's not too squishy, get that ultimate off that has mitigations, and get that engage for his team. Because outside of the Erlang Shen, you don't really have great engage. A Bologna roll, not a great engage. It's more of a reactionary tool because you can't chase too much. I mean, you can chase with it, but your backline isn't going to be able to do much with that CC.
I mean,
so.
credit where's due with the, the Kefri there. The root can come up pretty big in these engagements and that abduct, but getting in range for the abduct could always be an issue with an E-set on the team too.
Yeah, and it's scary for Genetics to get in range because he's going to be walled off by a Roar, and then all of a sudden there's a wall behind you and there's a Jingwei and an Uller in front of you hitting you. So he's got to build some of that physical defense, which I believe he has got. And he's going into a very, I guess, efficient build as well. Phoebe's almost finished. He will get Spirit Robe as well, so a stun or a silence from Paul or a Roar will make him quite tankier, and I can't imagine he'll need to ult himself in this game.
Interesting to see the beats pick up from Genetics on Capri as well, but I do feel at the stage of the game that he's choosing here, it's probably a good go-to for safety. Big Man Tings isolating from getting back towards mid lane as Twig gets against Paul. Snipe comes through from BMT onto a Roar, but it's not enough for a kill. Pin from Twig does connect as SOT gets a solo kill on Variety on the right-hand side. Aurora is still alive, but for how much longer? Over the wall, Big Man Tings finds it, but the sonic boom onto Twig should be his death, or is it because Genetics is there? He'll force Genetics back. Great abduct from him though to make sure his teammate's close, but still Twig falls down. Genetics could follow if Cyclone Spin can find the airstrike, but can't. Needs a couple more basics and will with SOT rotating around, and Netroid can't find a tail and kill. Now Big Man Tings has 1 health left, and there's not a whole lot he can do. The Spirit Ball comes through to the back of his head, but speaking of the back of his head, Netroid needs 1 more on SOT and will not find it. It's what, 4 for 0 across the map?
So unfortunate for Netroid. Expecting a huge rotation out of him because Cyclone Spin had a big one before him. But Netroid walks into lane, drops Tusky, and it does nothing. Didn't hit it at all. Then chases people around his tower, around the wall, doesn't find a single kill. If he got a crit, maybe he'd be able to chase him down a little bit, but a bit unlucky, and a classic Tusky, like he said. That's a big fight for the Titans.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing where it gets even worse is SOT finding that solo on Variety. We didn't catch it on screen because it was actually mid, but then he managed to be able to rotate into that mid lane at the tail end and put even more pressure with that man advantage, really open the door more so.
That's right, and that's a 2,000 gold lead now for the Titans, so they can get that pressure rolling. Variety still has his ultimate, so I'm not sure how he got soloed there, especially being a Bologna into a Hunter as well, but he's not happy about it.
Misjudged the, I guess, the amount of damage. Maybe the cooldown reduction came into play a little bit as well on Ul. And now Twig has to run away. SOT giving chase, looking for an axe, and we'll find out Variety. Walls drop down by a Roar, followed by the stun. The CC chain's beautiful, but a counter CC from Twig turns it around. The budget's good, but not enough. It leaps in SOT, looking for an axe. Sonic Boom 2, and Twig falls for a double kill for SOT in the solo lane.
Variety doesn't even get his ultimate off there. I think he just pressed it before he died, so it went on cooldown. But a Roar just sitting there in the tremors, disrupting Captain Twig, who had a great 3-man ultimate, but not enough to save Variety in that situation.
Ro, we were sat here before the game going, we're going to be in for a long one potentially with these compositions and how the games have been played. But, you know, cast a curse as usual. We're in for a speedy one here. Titans really turning up the gas and showing if you get this early lead, how much can you capitalize on it? And at the moment, it's extending to 3,500 gold.
That's right. One of the biggest strengths of these kind of comps is that they have a lot of objective DPS. So if you can accelerate the time to get to those objective DPS, you're still going to do a ton of damage to the Mercury, some of the highest objective DPS in the game. Fully stacked Rage, by the way, so he'll be critting quite a lot. Ula, plenty of damage on objectives. Cyclone Spin, obviously, Jingwei, more crit as well. So Paul will be going for that Boomba's Hammer as well. So if they accelerate their way to level 20, that's nuts.
I think the biggest thing is that there was fully stacked Rage at 14 minutes in the
It's a
game.
good Mercury game.
That's a rough one to be in if you're the Kings. So what do you do as the Kings? I mean, you didn't get aggressed on. I mean, that's twice on the right-hand side. You try to be pressured and forced out there. Variety's now at an 0-3 deficit here. Starting to fall further behind, I want to say, over SOT. And I don't think Genix has really put much of a foot wrong here, but there's only so much he can do as the support.
Yeah, it's just kind of been, not late to the party, but it's been forced before he can get there. I would like to see Netroid get involved a bit more, but as a mobile Artemis, you can't make your way to the other side of the map that quickly. So maybe if fights come to him soon, the Pyromancer is down, so maybe they'll look towards the Gold Fury and he can have a big impact, because now we get to see, hopefully, the prowess. Oh, well, if you're a Kings fan, hopefully, the prowess of Artemis in a team fight. He didn't get any value out of his last ball, but, you know, the rotations from Jingwei have been effective, but no effect out of the Artemis so far. Now we get to see a little bit of this matchup that isn't going great for a Variety.
I'm surprised SOT doesn't even start whittling down the tower a little bit more so, but instead, trying to deny a bit of farm where he can. That's off the mark for the most part, but Sonic Boom is around for layers. On this right-hand side of a rotation comes through from Twig, which is here just to try and secure the blue buff. SOT jumps on him, looks for the axe, doesn't find it. Buff is stripped away, but now SOT has no axe no leap available, but doesn't commit there. Worried about a rotation from mid, and you can see the Titans were already on the way if needed. SOT and Layers doing work on the right-hand side.
And this is how you play Ula. This is how you you position when you have this much pressure. I don't think Solo Troll touched the tower at all. He's just denying gold from Variety constantly poking him out, and just standing in front of him, making sure he can't do anything. That's how you use your pressure. Very, very frustrating to play against if you are Variety, but very well played by Solo Troll.
Checking with the dual lanes again, once again. Still Silver Branch Bros now complete for Cyclone Spin and Netroid. Not too involved at the moment.
Look at that damage out of Ula there as well. Double over the Bellona. And you would call a lot of solo lane damage fake damage.
It is
but
fake
honestly,
damage.
Well, I'm a solo laner. I'll defend myself here.
It's fake. You played
that
Yorm
gold
too,
lead
dude.
is very much because of Solo Troll. So give him some credit. 5 kills, by the way, and one of them being a solo kill as well. What a game for him.
You were solo lane. You played Yorm. You threw down Spit. It was a
With
massive.
Mana as well.
You got free damage the whole time.
I did fill in once and we lost to Obey, who weren't doing great that year.
Did you win?
I didn't win much.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I just can't remember.
I certainly didn't win much.
I just remember Yorm most of the time.
I won the Yorm games, yeah.
That were the big ones, really.
Yeah.
You got it banned against you eventually. Fury, though, under threat by the Titans here. Gold Fury dropping down to half health. Only Genetics really in the way. And obviously with the right-hand side, you see Twig and you see Variety over there. There's going to be no focus from that. And Titans just having to continue the pressure, and Kings haven't found a result.
And that's a telling sign of a Kings draft, Kings players that are feeling kind of weak right now. They don't want to go and contest that Gold Fury. They'd rather just go and 2 men split these waves and invade a blue buff. That's not a positive trade at all for them, but they are feeling weak, both 0-3 each.
Polynomicon picked up as well for ESA and mid for Paul.
I called it, did I?
Too much of it. Why, though?
Look, you get an auto attack after you get your stun. You get an auto attack after you get your silence.
True.
She's just very broken up in the way
bumpers.
she. It'll work even better. She's very broken up in the way she does her damage and the way she casts, especially the way she plays defensively. You can always weave auto attacks into those abilities. So even though she has a channeled ability on her one, it doesn't matter because a lot of the time you're just using that to
Players
escape
get a bit aggressive, does get pulled in by Twig. Forced to beat very late in the day there. And in comes Variety with a perfect Eagles rally, but the backup from his team wasn't there. Sonic Boom weighs just enough to split the difference, but he's still running for his life and gets the blink up in time. SOT did a good job healing, but now can he get away himself? Twig trying to whittle him down and will dive the tower, but this tower hurts, baby! And he falls down very soon after. Big Man Tings did get the snipe off, but as he does, Paul and Aurora collapse and trap him in the pit. SOT turns back up, can't find the axe, but Big Man Tings can't find an escape, and they're going to wait out the ultimate from Genetics. Oh no, they don't! ESA explode at the worst time! Variety falls down, Genetics and BMT will survive, but again, another 2 members dead of the Kings.
Not a mistake we've seen so far from the Kings today. Against the Bolts, they were patient. They can lose a little bit. They can give up a little bit of gold because they're confident in their late game. But that was a sign of Captain Twig and Variety getting desperate. Layers low health, too fast for them to catch up. Twig, I think, was wrong with his I think he should have gone for the mink and he went for the turtle.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, 2 people down, Captain Twig coming out of base. I don't think they can get to this fire giant in time, if they even know.
Don't even think they would be able opportunity to. I think see where SOT was positioned there with that health and
That's
that
what I'm
mana.
talking about, yeah.
He's on zone work more than
Yeah.
anything else. And I think Kings knew there was just no stopping it. Pyro on top of that in trade for a tier 1 tower on the left-hand side. And the Titans have come to play today.
They're a bit out of control now as well, so Solo Troll will be able to join his team in sieging sometime soon. I imagine they'll go to that dual lane, get those towers down, and finally Netroid might be able to get involved. But he's level 18, so maybe he can have a decent effect, but the rest of his team quite underleveled, and they're down almost 10,000 gold at this point. If they get some towers on the side of the Titans, it's going to get out of control real fast.
The only thing Kings can really do here is try and tread water for a while longer. Catch up a little bit in farm, get to level 20s, because at the moment, you can see SOT and Cyclone Spin's builds are very escalated at this moment in time. 6 items started now for SOT in this. And that just means that you're going to have to sit back and hold because they will dive in. And that's one thing you kind of need from this comp. Someone to dive in. And I've noticed SOT isn't scared to do that.
No, not at all. Neither was Aurora by the looks of it. He's getting so tanky at this point. 3 levels up on genetics. So Kings are not out of it yet. They just need to slow the Titans down and kind of stop the bleeding a little bit. If they can delay some of these tier 2s so Titans don't get a chance to poke Phoenixes and stuff like that, that might be their ticket back into this game and they can go into like a next Fire Giant fight with only being 12k behind, which doesn't sound too great for them, but it's honestly one of the better options they have at this point.
But I like what we're seeing from Titans here. Splitting the map up a little bit, leaving Cyclone left, gets that tier 2 tower, still finding gold and forcing Camelot Kings to defend. And now Genetics is a little bit too far forward, needs some support, won't get it, has to ult himself. Meanwhile, Netroid can't get through the wall, but a great ult from Variety will peel away for Cyclone and give Netroid the room. Meanwhile, on the backside, SOT versus Twig. Smite came through, but a great Aegis from SOT to survive. He jumps back in towards Netroid and Paul gets the kill for a triple.
Criminal.
Where's the quadra going to be? Not there as Cyclone gets 1. 14-1, and we're on the Phoenixes on the left-hand side. Titans played that beautifully.
This is why I don't want to go home and play ranked right now, is because people are picking Ula in my ranked games, they're picking AMC Solo in my ranked games, and it's just not fun to play against. Variety having a nightmare game right now, and Solo Troll having one of the games of his life right now. What an Aegis on that Ra snipe. Perfect reaction timing, and it must have been just the sound that tipped him off.
And sometimes sound is so important in the game of Smite that a lot of people don't realize. There's too many people who play with music.
I can't stand it, honestly.
It tilts me.
I'm going to call him out here, but Adapting used to do that. 2-time world champion, loved his music.
When you're that good, dude.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Whatever.
I couldn't tell him no. That's right. I was coaching them. I was like, oh, that doesn't seem right to me, but it works.
Hey, Adaptive, why don't you not use that? You know, and he's like, yeah, whatever, I still want.
He just picks up his hand and he's got 2 rings.
Will fall, but a beautiful snipe from BMT will boost his damage numbers. Won't be enough for Titans to really fall back and be too worried about, as they do have the Fire Giant around their waist too. But the damage is done. Left-hand Phoenix, middle Phoenix now down. The trebuchet that the Kings have had on that left-hand side has been there for a while. I wonder if it's the time to use that around the next FG, just trying to hold that Fire Minion wave a while.
I'm not sure it can even do much against Fire Minions. A lot of the time, this trebuchet shots are so slow that the Fire Minions might just... Yeah, and that'll burn, that'll burn.
Exactly. They've got fire arrows, right? There's no other way around.
Yeah, well, they should have thought about that in the design team, but oh well. Kings, you're now down 2 Phoenixes.
You roasted the design team over. What do you want? A trebuchet?
I want a ballista. I want a ballista to shoot through all the minions. That'd be cool.
Oh, okay, a ballista. Yeah.
Or a big gun her.
But I still made of wood.
I'm sure there's metal one somewhere or something.
Metal. Do you know how hard it is to move a metal?
This one moves so slow, it may as well be that heavy anyway.
It's huge. It's supposed to move slow. Primal Fury on the left-hand side now going to go down in favor of the Titans. They just strip the map of everything before returning to base and spending up that final golden hand as they look for maybe a tier 2 tower on the right, followed by the FG. We'll see how they choose to go. If you're the Kings here, though, you're already kind of starting to turn your attention to game 2 with the 2 Phoenixes being down row. What would your feedback be to them of like where we need to change? Because I don't think their comp's terrible, if I'm honest.
In my opinion, they just need to calm down a little bit. I think Twig going for that blue buff invade was a little ambitious. Granted, you have to give credit to Paul for that great rotation, but then getting desperate and chasing layers up that right lane as well was definitely a bad move, and it just kind of cycled into a Fire Giant at 18 minutes, and after that, they're in a really bad position. So Kings normally being a team, at least so far today, being a team where they're just cool, calm, and collected, I didn't feel like they were that this game. So maybe they're feeling the pressure a little bit. Maybe Titans are just know how to press their buttons that Bolts couldn't press. So I think you must think maybe a different draft in terms of they picked Ra Erlang last, and we haven't seen that traditional combo come into play at all. A lot of the times, I think it was Obey back in the day that used to do an Erlang taunt, an Erlang root into a simple Ra ult. Yeah, that's right. But we haven't seen that at all today. So Paul is just doing a good job at playing back, for example, but I just don't like the combo right now. Not in this meta, unless they think they can make it work.
FG about to be started by the Titans now. Nobody around from the side of the Kings just yet. Maybe we'll see Twig peek his head around this corner, but I don't think we'll see a huge defense out of the Kings here. They're really going to look for this Phoenix defense, but there's no Phoenixes.
No, they've got one chance, and that's in the right lane. But when you've got one chance and you're 15k behind, I wouldn't bet on them at all. So I don't think anybody in chat would either. So they're just going to go up and clear this left wave. They don't even have time to do that. But look, Titan's doing a great job at just pressing and pressing and pressing. They don't give Kings any room to breathe at all, because that's where Kings are strongest. They are strongest in the late game. So if you don't let them get there, that's a genuine strategy. And I think Solo Troll has been the MVP for me in that regard, just absolutely pressuring them out at any opportunity he gets.
4 members of the Titans on the right-hand side, and Layers may look for the option for Sonic Boom through as the Phoenix is already near enough dead already. Cyclone Spin did get pinned there, but it's not enough to weather him away. Janex being looked at, has to beat early on, worried about the damage coming through from Layers and the CC. SOT finds a nice axe onto Variety and pushes the whole of the Kings back. And the Kings surrender their throne room here, falling all the way back to the fountain and have to clear minions.
At this point, Paul can just kind of commit. If he gets his team to just group up in this E-set ult on that Titan, they can probably just commit and blow it up. I think that's maybe the one chance Kings might have. You know, maybe they win the 5v5 on their Titan, but honestly, I can't imagine them actually winning the 5v5 at this point. That is so far behind, and if it's all up to Paul, really. If he has a good ultimate on the most of his team plus the Titan, they could end here. But otherwise, it's going to take some poke and maybe looking for an engagement.
Been a very clean game from the Titans. Honestly, it's been very focused around this solo lane, which Paul was the instigator more than anything else.
He was. Honestly, he was.
And him doing that made it open the door for SOT to run away with this game with Layers in backup. Janex and Variety and Twig trying to frontline away, protect the Titan with eating those basic attacks where they can. Variety not down to half health. Eats an axe, will get away. Peel away as the snipe hits 2 from BMT, but the damage check isn't enough to worry them. The worry from Titans seems to be they want minions in there tanking it for them, and to try and just pick off one target.
They do. I think it's up. They just have to make a call at some point and just say, you know what, we're healthy enough. We can stay in this E-set ult for long enough that we can just commit to this Titan. But that Ra snipe buys them some time a little bit. But now we're just waiting for the left and right waves to get here.
Aurora blinking in, looks towards Genetics, who gets CC'd for a second. But on the backside, you see Variety going on Cyclone, force the airstrike. Aurora will get out as the crits from Layers came around the corner. Wasn't enough to write home about. And SOT is pretty low. And in doing so, as soon as SOT falls back, so do the Titans. They're really facilitating through this ult.
Okay, they're still in it as much as they can be in it. So, I mean, it's 20k gold. That is quite a lot, but we haven't seen Layers able to find a big ult through yet. We saw Aurora catch a couple with his ult, but it's just not really enough. When we've got the Shell and the Ra heal and the Kepri ult on the other side, it can be really hard to break into that base. Titans just not wanting to risk it. They go back, spend their gold, Paul with the Boomba's hammer now as well. You know, normally when you get to this point, you see teams like, all right, now we can contest this EFG, but I can't imagine they're even going to step up to this EFG right now. Still no Phoenixes. They might be back up in time, but it's going to be close.
I was kind of looking at the state of the game there, and I'm really... Do you risk it as Titans there to end, just knowing that you've got so many towers up, the Fire Giant's down,
Why not?
the Fury's down, go for the end.
Why
And
not?
if it
Give it
goes
a shot.
wrong, they do get a bit of an advantage, right? But you could have closed out. Instead, they've gone for the safer option, which is also giving Kings wiggle room to survive.
It is, yeah. I think it would have been fairly low risk to go for that end. Just like you said, there's not much that they would have gotten from that. They just get a bit of farm and they get to catch up a little bit, but a little bit is not 21k. So
I mean, worst case, what, you lose a Phoenix? I guess that's pretty big if you lose a Phoenix.
Honestly, they got to get through towers as well, so it's just the XP that they would have given them, and they didn't even want to risk that. And now they're back already, so they spent their gold and come straight back even before the Fire Giant.
Minion wave on the left-hand side. Middle wave's going to be a bit of a time for the Titans to get that down there. Right-hand side is blocked by minions, but a good pull onto Twig there, who gets caught by SOT on the backside, got fully focused. The snipe from BMT wasn't enough and didn't find a home. Good revive from Genexo to keep Netroid up, and the zoning wick is good. Cyclone Spin will find Variety, and actually SOT still gets out, and Twig, who committed, ends up falling down to Cyclone, and now the double kill, they move on towards the Titan. Genetics and Netroid there, but no ultimates available. The burst damage is not going to be enough to bring them down. You can see Titans trying to whittle down their health bars as well as the Titan, but game one will go to the Tartarus Titans there, 16-1 at the end of that. Took longer at the end, but
Yeah,
calculated play.
a little bit hesitant at the end, but honestly, you can't fault them after what a game they've had there. Paul with a fantastic early rotation, Solo or Troll basically taking that as his cue to just go, go, and go, and never letting up on the pressure. And the amount of pressure that he brought was just insane. Over a Bologna of all characters, one of the highest pressure gods in the game. So, Ula, I guess I'll see you in my lane tonight.
Or will he be banned all weekend long? We'll see.
Hope so.
Hopefully it is. But game one down, we mentioned what the Kings need to go back to. I think the start of the game, they made the right play. They tried to pressure the solo lane.
Yeah.
They just misjudged it, and Paul's rotation made such an impact.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it the right play, though. I mean, I love a little bit of aggression in the early game, but the amount of they risked by doing that, and then overextending into the right lane again, chasing layers, so they just cost them the game, and at that point, they couldn't come back.
Still a best of 3, though, so Kings still have a shot today to move on to tomorrow in that final spot. Or will Titans take it in 2? We'll find out after this break.
Just some more whiskey. I can't seem to understand how you do this to me. You've been running in circles inside my head. Wasn't looking for love, but baby, I found you instead. Saw you in that red dress. I can't seem to understand how you got all that finesse. Still been running in circles inside my head. Wasn't looking for love, but baby, I found you instead.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. 1-0 at the moment, and the Camelot Kings stand one loss away from being knocked down into the losers bracket. It's, of course, going to be Blazybard and Mifflin back on the desk to talk about that last game and get us set up for the next one.
The Camelot Kings strike early in that they tried to get aggressive around the blue buff of the Tartarus Titans, and, well, the Tartarus Titans were able to smack them down, and from there, got it over with pretty quickly. And that might just be the extent of my analysis, man. That was a one-sided battle.
It definitely looked a lot different from the last time. that these guys squared up for sure. The Camelot Kings didn't have a lot of answers. I'm now starting to believe Genetics when he was saying earlier they weren't very confident. They didn't look super in this game.
Well, I mean, the Camelot Kings kind of fell into the trapping of the Tartarus Titans. If you're getting aggressive against the Titans, that's exactly what the Titans want. I think maybe the easiest way or the highest odds way of beating this style of play from the Tartarus Titans is just to match them in late game presence. It's so difficult to play the aggressor against a team that is very willing to just let buffs go if they have to, or just let camps ride away. So maybe just scale with them. That could be one answer. But in this one, the Camelot Kings tried their best to get the ball rolling early, and we're not quite capable of it. And once the Tartarus Titans had established their lead, they didn't really slow down at all. They were putting pressure onto objectives. They were rotating in aggressively. Phenomenal individual play from the guy on your screen. SOT deserves every bit of praise you can give him, because I haven't seen Uhl play as clean as that from our professional hunters, and that guy plays Warriors.
7-0 at the moment. Sorry, I say at the moment. At the end of that game, 7-0 for SOT. Truly did put on a masterclass. Myth, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the issues that the Kings were having, specifically the Ra. I think is a big talking point for this draft.
I mean, I felt like Ra was doing enough damage, right? Like, Big Man Tings was consistently landing his ultimates. It just was not enough damage to 100-0 somebody. You want to build a composition around this Ra that will have the damage follow-up to confirm some of those kills. Erlong Shen similarly doesn't have a whole lot of burst now with some of the changes to him, so it felt like the facilitation was there. Blink in, 9 turns Blessing, Searing Pain every single time. But it really was just the Searing Pain applying the damage. So I wouldn't leave that at the foot of Big Man Tings or the Raw selection. I think it was just a composition that didn't have the best tools to work around the Raw.
So, okay, going off of that, as we get into Picks and Bans for game number 2, what would you want to see Kings change about that draft?
Well, there are a couple avenues. You can go for a completely different style of draft, as I said earlier, try and match some of that late game scaling of the Tartarus Titans. You could also just go for a hyper early game composition and try and bring the pressure so quickly that the Titans aren't allowed to Voltron up and stack up as 5. So there are avenues going forward. If I were to change any individual piece of the draft for the Kings, I probably would switch out that Erlong Shen for something like a Hun Bot or just a more consistent engage tool that'll have decent backline disruption. But it's a completely different game, and I think we're going to be looking at some completely different stuff.
And already, the changes from the Camelot Kings, taking away Ola from SOT and Khepri away from the Titans as a whole. They don't want to see it picked up, and of course, as second pick, they're not going to have the opportunity to take it for themselves. That does leave gods like Jingwei open if the Titans want to pick that one up. Artemis still on the board. There are a couple other hunters I can pull off the top of my head. Olaran, AMC, but it will be the Mercury first locked here.
A lot of global presence, great late game scaling. Acts as a pick away from the Kings. We know Twig very apt to go towards these auto attack style assassins. So the Titans essentially using their first pick as a 4th ban and also just getting themselves something that is going to have phenomenal scaling that fits their style. That early global presence, though, for Mercury, I think, is especially dangerous against picks like this. Surprised to see the AMC in retaliation. Assuming that it is ESET mid, which it has been in the past for the Titans, and I don't think it's a fair assumption to make for the Kings, but let's assume, and it is AMC in the duo lane, I'm expecting a good deal of presence from Layers over in that duo lane the second he ticks over to level 5. Probably more likely that we're looking at an ESET support, though.
Yeah, the Mercury just super good at punishing that AMC, and I mean, if you're looking at the immobile Hunter on the side of the Kings, what more to beat it than the super mobile Jingwei that the Titans are going to lock in here in combination with the Olaran. And just looking at the top 3, Mifflin, this is not looking great for the Kings in terms of what the Titans have been able to pick up.
Yeah, the Titans essentially just going back to the same style of, hey, we're going to get to that late game, and when we do, we're going to hit really hard, really quickly, and we're going to shred objectives. Jingwei, Olaran, and Mercury will make short work of any objective in front of them, permanent or semi-permanent, fire giants, towers, anything that lines up there. The Kings, though, seem to be bringing a bit more late-game presence themselves. Double Hunter lock-in, both incredibly strong scalers, both make great use of the New Age styles of build, could look towards things like crit. AMC can go down that standard ability tree. Assuming that this is now ESET support looking at this draft, I am curious to see what the Kings would take mid. That's not to say that ESET can't be holding it down in that mid role, but I'm not expecting it. It doesn't scream big man things to me.
Well, I mean, if it's not going to be MT, I think they might have fooled the Titans because they have swapped their second round of bans. Last time it was the Nuwa and the Kukulkan. This time around, it's going to be more solo lane focused. They want to make sure Variety is put on something a little less comfortable. Taking away the Vamana, taking away the Baron Samdi. I don't hate this. I do think that we might see Variety lean towards something closer to the King Arthur in this situation. I think that would have maybe been a more effective ban than the Vamana, but the Fenrir going to be locked in most likely for Twig.
Well, Vamana's been on a tear recently, in the jungle in particular, especially against gods like Oleron. Sanctified Field just doesn't work against him, so the Titans don't want to put Oleron in a situation where he doesn't have counterplay for the first 10 or so minutes of the game. So I think Vamana, a very smart takeaway by the Tartarus Titans. Fenrir picked up for the Camelot Kings, likely slated for the jungle, will bring a good deal of pressure and has a similar way of dealing with Oleron in that there's really nothing Oleron can do against the Brutalize. Will slow him down a fair bit. Sanctified Field will time dilate that damage output. But as long as that Sanctified Field is down, or even if he is forcing it just with the Brutalize, Fenrir can use Unchained to escape that situation or switch up into the Ragnarok, channeling that CC immunity to chase out Oleron in his own giant no-play zone there. So I really like this pickup for the Kings. Now the Tartarus Titans need to find out how they're going to peel their backline. What support are they going to look towards? I think potentially we could be looking at a Geb here if they so choose, but instead it's the Jing Shen. Against all these auto attackers, Ferocious Roar is going to find some value.
Absolutely, and we're still looking for a solo lane pick here for the Tartarus Titans. A lot of options available. Bellona still on the table, but it will be the Amaterasu, the other warrior we've been seeing given a lot of prevalence here. And the Kings now probably looking for a similar option, unless this AMC is going towards Variety in the solo lane. But this whole draft from Kings is so flexible that most of these picks can find some value in almost every single role here at the SPL level. So do me a preliminary sweep, Mifflin. What's your thoughts?
About the Kings draft?
Yeah.
Understood. I'm going to buy some time by gesticulating aggressively while I'm not on camera as we wait for this last pick to be taken.
Sounds
Full
good.
minute and a half that I'd have to buy for myself if they're going to exhaust their bank time, so not sure how exactly I'm going to do so. Don't have any limericks prepared for you.
But that's the
Bellona locked in will shine a light on the rest of this draft. So I think we can very accurately identify that as Variety's selection, which would leave AMC up to mid. Artemis and ESET should be able to hold it down in the duo lane. Some flex potential between ESET and Fenrir. Both could play support, both could play jungle. I think it is more likely that we see Fenrir in jungle. So the Kings likely looking to play around the objectives. I'm thinking they've got phenomenal shred just about everywhere on the map. Decent confirmation as long as that support has started to rotate out. So loving what we've seen from the Kings. They're going to have similar late game scaling to the Titans as well. So if this game does stagnate throughout the early portions, we won't see the Kings fall into the same trappings as they did in game 1. It was over-aggression around that blue buff that opened up the door for the Titans. And the Kings go for that aggressive style of play, realizing that had they gotten to an even state 30-some-odd minutes into the game, the Titans likely would have just outscaled. Now the Kings can meet up and on an even playing field at that portion. That's not to say the Kings won't get aggressive earlier. The Titans won't get aggressive in their own right, but neither team will feel, I suppose, the weight to do so. The onus is not on any one of these two teams.
For sure. I think there's a lot of decent initiation tools and a lot of counter-initiation tools from both of these teams, right? The Kings want to initiate, they can send Twig forward on this Fenrir. Bellona can ult in as well. There are a couple options, and on the counter-engage, you have the ESET as well. Flip side, Titans, if you want to counter-engage, look no further than Jing Chen. Just put everyone in a washing machine. Amaterasu has the ultimate as well. So I think there's going to be some interesting counterplay between these two, but Mifflin, if none of them are getting aggressive per se, what is going to be the objective?
Objectives.
Objectives.
Yeah, Gold Fury, Pyromancer, Greater Scorpions, back camps, invades. That's the macro play. That's where you're looking to establish your lead on the map. The Kings in the past have been very good at that style of play. Generally, it's a conversation or a joke that, hey, if the Kings go to the 15-minute mark at 0-0 on 9-4 in patches previous, they're probably going to have a 3,000 gold lead just because they're so good at playing the map, so good at splitting their farm. In weeks of recent, the Kings have slowed down a bit of that style. They've been getting outpaced by teams like the Jade Dragons and at times the Tartarus Titans. But the Kings are very adept. I think they should be able to shift that style back to their age-old bread and butter if that's the strategy. And looking at this composition, that very well could be the strategy.
Cool, so we're just looking for the Kings to hold out if they can't get initial pressure and then flip it back around just like we've seen them do the rest of the week.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Mifflin, I got to keep pressing you on a couple of these issues.
Please.
I think there's some cool stuff to talk about the combinations coming out here from the Tartarus Titans. So obviously we've got the Olaran, we've got a couple other picks to set up into that. Are we looking at any particular... Never mind, we don't have time for that particular question because the game number two between the Tartarus and Titans and the Kings starting now.
Yeah, it is. That was a weird throw. Hi, it's me again, and Ro alongside me, and of course, Doug on the spectator. We're going into game 2 now between Titans versus the Kings, and the Titans are up 1-0 here as I turn around to look at the game and see exactly where everyone's playing. It is going to be a Raw on the Jing 10. Back in my head, I was kind of like, maybe it's an Amma in the duo lane, but
yeah.
I'm expecting, and what I would like here, honestly, Ro, from my point of view, is to see the Kings do what they did in Game 1 and pressure the solo lane again around the blue buff, because I think their 2-on-2 is again better.
This time, yeah, this time it is better, but this time they have to expect the pole rotation as well. But it's
That's
a very
true.
different look at a solo troll this time. Last time when Captain Twig was invading that blue buff, solo troll was on that Ula and actually jumped over the wall into that blue buff and was able to take the fight. This time, he might actually be losing pressure to this Bologna again, but he won't be able to get to that blue buff as easy. Granted, Amaterasu, some of the best blue buff secure in the game, some of the best secure in the game, period, with her 2 charged up just like that, is able to do a good chunk of damage on demand, so difficult for them to out-secure. But they do have a Fenrir, for example, so if Amaterasu does come in towards that blue buff to defend, they can pick her off relatively easy. But we have to get to that point first. Paul getting pressure in mid lane already over an AMC, surprising.
Nice spirit ball there, connecting from Genetics on towards Cyclone Spin and just pressuring him because they hit level 2 a little bit quicker. Not too much of a surprise with a Jing 10 and Jing Wei.
It's a difficult one.
Perfect. But the idea of having both of those in the lane together, their lane clear is
abysmal, you could say.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a clean word, and that's a good one. Abysmal.
It really is.
Realistically, and it allows Isis and Artemis to get off to a good threat early on, so pressure in the dual lane for them. But what can they find off the back of it? Can they strip away some of this farm in the jungle?
Yeah, it's just Genetics and Netroid finding a little bit of extra farm themselves. It also gives some insurance to Big Man Tings and Captain Twig to walk into that Oracle camp, so there's no threat of Jing Wei and Xing Chen rotating in. So they'll get a small XP lead in the mid lane, they'll get a small XP lead in the dual lane. Though not able to find too many camps so far in the dual lane, I think the next wave will be relatively even pressure, and then they'll just trade 1-for-1. Speaking of 1-for-1, I think mid camps will go that way as well.
Yeah, looks like it. But at the same time, the mid camp's the same experience this day and age with those two?
No.
Close, but no.
Yeah. Close, but I think it doesn't matter too much in this early game. We're only seeing about 100 gold lead on the side of Kings so far, but they will try to get the, I guess, neutral camp, the one right in the middle.
Oh, that's what we're calling that now, the neutral?
Yeah,
Okay.
lack of words here. So, but I don't think it matters really too much. I think we'll go to a mid-game fight for the most part, unless we see some blue buff invades. Which Twig, he's looking there again, but I think he's a little late this time.
Well, you can also see that Layers is on point and ready to help out SOT here. Variety now collapsing in too. SOT was well aware of it. And the fight will begin. No rotation coming this time round, though, as you can see Variety trying to keep them at bay, and they will steal away the blue. That's kind of how should have happened game 1.
Yeah.
So we see the action again.
The difference here, though, is this time Big Man Tings actually has a great amount of pressure in that mid lane. He's able to keep Paul pinned under that tower, and Paul can't rotate without losing a wave there. So able to take the 2v2 invade, get some value out of having that higher pressure Bologna. But now we're getting to the point where Solo Troll will finish off that first item, which is going to be Golden Blade. So he'll be able to rival the pressure. And once he gets his sustain up, which means leveling up his 1, so a couple more levels in his god, so then he can actually take some poke and return some poke. He should be just fine in that lane. But a small XP lead and a small gold lead as well in the advantage of Kings.
Looking at Captain Twig this game, I think there's a lot of pressure on him in this one, on this Fenrir pick, mainly because he's one of the only ones that can really get to that sanctified field Olaran in the mid lane.
That's right.
Using the Ragnarok and just, keep the pressure going.
Yeah, if Kings want to press the go button and get some early game pressure, in comparison to last game, then it's really all off the back of Twig. Maybe Genetics, if he gets tanky, gets these Thief stacks online, he could be up in their face, looking for stuns, looking for silences, but he's at threat. He doesn't have that much mobility. He can defend himself decently well, but compared to Captain Twig, who could ult or jump or do another jump and get away, it's much easier for him to force the issue, whereas Genetics is kind of have to just be reactionary.
I haven't touched on it yet, but only 2 hunters on each team. Technically, I'm going to class Olaran as a hunter here, but
bad.
you're happy with 2 instead of 3?
Yes, we get a normal team fight, so Well, who
Ish.
knows? Yeah, we'll see if one team snowballs and one team might be very far ahead by the time we get to a normal team fight. But yeah, we still see a lot of objective DPS out of Titans with the Mercury. First picking it, by the way, kind of, not, I wouldn't say controversial, but not something I would have expected to see from the Titans. I definitely would have expected to see that from like Jade Dragons, for example. But it looks like Leia is fully on board with his Mercury pick right now.
Talking about picks and actual itemization here. Golden Blades, 3 of them
It is
already.
better.
Seen a lot more of this as of late, even now in this solo lane, just helping that wave clear even more so.
That's right. Waves are tanky now, and it takes a little while to clear them. So if you have that help with the AoE damage from the Golden Blade on your auto attacks, it makes it much easier.
Here we go again, though. Blue buff invade, but Oleron's here this time round. And immediately the pings came through, and Kings went, actually, maybe we don't.
get
And he
flashbacks.
does steal it away there with the Scourge variety, so the pressure was good enough. But immediately that just disengaged, like, wait a second, Paul's missing. Let's not have it happen again.
Yeah, I would honestly call that solo troll a little bit for that. No way he should be letting that get stolen away from him if he's able to effectively charge up his 2 and hit the blue buff with like a 400 damage burst. Should be a pretty easy secure, but Variety well timed on the Scourge there. And, I guess some credit to Paul as well, able to rotate over and get him to back out, but not far enough.
Well, you can actually see the level lead discrepancy on that right-hand side now with the jungle and the solo lane because of it. Variety and Twig slightly ahead at the moment as now we see the supports start to make this rotation towards mid lane now where they'll spend most of their time. And we'll see exactly if this is going to change things up in the mid lane. Both these carries have to be a little bit more careful there.
One thing we haven't seen so far is Leia's looking for these ultimates up the lane. A lot of these Mercury picks, they kind of hover below these tier 1 towers and look for opportunities to ult, but really he's just been kind of pinned down on his own buffs and defending blue buffs, so not able to use his early pressure. Is that another steal?
No, it wasn't. Aurora tried to try and rip it away with the Furious Roar there, but won't find it. Took a little bit more of that Sonic Boom, though, from Lays. I mean, the only lane I can really see I feel comfortable trying is Artemis, but he's got Blink and not Beads.
That's true.
So as soon as, he jumps in there, the Tuskie's going to come into play and deny the option. Maybe they could play around that.
That's a brave choice. Now he's really scared of the Fenrir pickup. He's really scared of, I guess, any E-set CC at all. He can't really DPS into a Bologna because he's just going to be disarmed. So I think, Blink generally the faster relic in the early game. You're able to get active, but without beads, I don't think he can actually get active against this team.
Getting active is Cyclone Spin. He'll use his ultimate to immune the damage out from Tusky there. Aurora still ends up eating it though, but at the same time, Netroid was forced back under his tier 1 and will be base in there, so more pressure there for Cyclone Spin on this left-hand side. And Twig now rotating around to this, knowing Airstrike is down. I think Twig's trying to jump on in, look for Cyclone Spin. If you can find the Brutalizer, it will cause some problems. And Cyclone still waiting patiently, holding those beads, waiting for the Ragnarok to come through, which isn't even there. But on the right-hand side now, Layers is making a gank attempt on Variety. Sonic Boom misses completely.
Painful.
I mean, let's just say hit the wall, right?
We've all been there. We've all been there.
No, I haven't. I just don't play Mercury. So
Well, there you go. So you
I'm
win by
not scum.
default.
That's why. I'm not crit scum. But yeah, nice rotation on the right-hand side there from Layers, so a bit of pressure. Going back to Layers a little bit, I do like the idea, though, of him just farming up, because if Fenrir's not finding anything, the longer
fair.
the game goes, the more important Mercury's going to be.
We did see an interesting choice out of Fenrir there as well. He was on that Jingwei. He could easily ult. He knew that Jingwei didn't have her ultimate available, so he would have at least forced the beads.
Yeah.
But he decided not to. He just kind of sat there and let Jingwei walk away, really, even with genetics following up. So I'm surprised not to see Captain Twig take the Cyclone Spin beads, but maybe he just wants to hold that ult on, hold on to that ult for another reason.
Yeah, we'll see exactly how that ends up playing out, because I agree with you that maybe they could have forced beads there, maybe even pick up a Raw, right?
Yeah.
Take him for a ride a little bit, but I guess the
He
damage
has beads
output...
as well now.
I was going to say, the damage output from both of them, probably not that much there,
Yeah.
if anything. I mean, Isis, support Isis of that isn't going to do much about the CC chain. Group in the mid lane, though, focus on these left-hand camps, which will go the way of genetics for at least one of them, make that 2 for the Kings now. So we check them in the gold, but it's only 1,000 difference, but 1,000 with no kills shows that Kings are winning the battle so far.
And Mifflin said it on the desk, this is kind of what we're used to seeing from
Yeah.
Kings in the regular season. Even last year, they're very good at this early game macro play. They farm very efficiently, they split waves efficiently, they generally prioritize Scorpions so they get that global gold, and then they push into a mid-late game stage where they have a small gold advantage and generally a comp advantage as well. They like to build comps around team fights, so pretty comfortable this game, especially compared to the last.
And the blue buff on the right-hand side is coming up once again for the Tartarus Titans. Layers returns to base, picks up an item in the short sword, working towards that rage once again. Don't think it's going to be the rage of last game, though, that was fully stacked at 13 minutes, but it's still one of the core items on a Mercury.
I think that's a big reason why he probably first picked this game as well. He said he thought back to last game, it's like, well, that felt great.
not? Yeah.
I had 5 stacks at like, I don't know, he was level 7 or something. He's looking now, at least, that's good. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
So now King's not pressuring these buffs as much, so Layers doesn't have to be there to defend them. Solo Troll doing it all on his own, while Layers can search in these lanes. He's looking around mid lane at a pretty vulnerable AMC, and then he might go look at the Artemis as well.
Twig and Layers will meet on the left-hand side around these oracles here at the Gold Fury, and the contest will begin between the two. Surprised if we see Layers go for this, knowing that Twig does have his ultimate available and no beads
try
on
for the
Layers,
steal.
but the cheeky steal might come into play. Not
quite.
this time. Level 9, though, for Twig, evening up with Layers for now, as now the mid lane is rotating in. The pressure is on. Twig knocked to half health, jumps away. A raw CC chained away as Cyclone rotate around the corner. Netroid now joining in too. Pressure in favor of the Titans, but that's all she wrote. Unless Janex gets caught here, and he does. Pulled back into the Sanctuary as well. And Janex should be first blood here unless a mistake is made. Paul, granted for one, as SOT has rotated with Variety towards mid to keep big man Tings and Variety at bay. Titans catch Genetics out.
So greedy, honestly, of Genetics there. He had that beads that
It's so
entire
late,
time,
yeah.
and he popped it while he was being thrown into an Oleron, which will get him out of the Oleron ult, but by that point, he's in the middle of the damage. He could have just popped it with the beads before getting picked up, dropped his ultimate, well, he did drop his ultimate, and he let himself get thrown out of it. So a greedy call from him, and that ends up spelling First Blood.
Now, First Blood, obviously, we talk about First Blood a lot, and it's mainly because there is a bit more bonus gold to it in the grand scheme of things. So going towards Paul in mid lane will exacerbate his build a little bit more.
That's right, and it evens up the grass. We saw Kings with a small lead there, and Genetics still will be ahead in XP and is building his stack, so he will outscale in a way, but all the effort Kings put into getting those neutral camps and evading that blue buff earlier in the game is completely nullified for that gold. And now Paul, probably the worst character, maybe bar some Mercury stacks, some Rage stacks for Mercury. You definitely don't want to be fighting an all-around with early kills, that's what I'm saying.
Haven't spoke too much on the physical versus magical battle that's been going on for a while. Obviously, physical's winning out. But in doing so, the Kings have stacked up a lot of physical here, which is showing a Raw can just stack this physical protections consistently. Pyromancer looked at now by the Kings. Rotation coming in from the Titans too. A Raw trying to wrap around the back as the Sonic Boom does connect with Genetics, and Kings get the Pyro. Layers pulled into danger, but there's no follow-up damage. Eagles rally from Variety to split the difference and fall back, but he's picked up and thrown back in towards Paul. And now Variety could be another casualty here. He's looking for a kill at Layers at the tail end and won't find it. Even the bees won't be enough as SOT takes his life. 3 kills to Titans then overall, but the Pyro going to the Kings.
Now that feels a little bit like last game, and uncharacteristic of the Kings to be making these calls at this stage of the game and just being like, oh, there's 4 of you there, I'll do a Pyromancer in front of you. That's not what Kings normally do. They're more calculated. They'll play the map. They'll pressure you out and then do an objective. But it seems they just randomly decided, and it looked like on this, I believe it was Twig that probably made the call because he was the one that started it, just decided to, let's try an objective here and see how it works out. But it's not that easy when they have a Mercury ult who has Blink as well, so he can get in position very easily. Didn't even need to use it. And then the Xing Chen chase as well. So a greedy call, again. I guess greedy maybe not the... It was ambitious, I'll say that much.
Well, the first 5 minutes of this game or so, we're talking about the Kings having the lead because of the solo lane rotations and the pressure and the buffs, but now look at the difference there. You can see Layers a bit of a lead over Captain Twig now in the jungle and experience. And SOT has caught up in levels too, so it becomes much more of an issue now as this game goes on about where we're going to see Kings try and pivot to at the moment. Genetics hasn't been able to do much so far.
No, and I don't like the set pick too much right now, I'll be honest. I don't think it's great into the carries, and I don't think it's great into crit. Because, for example, I don't think he can walk into this Gold Fury.
This Fury's down too quick at the end of the day.
does
Kings will
get it.
steal it, though. Genetics gets it. With the Circle of Protection, Tusky comes into play, but beads are used multiple times by Titans. And Genetics will fall down. Right-hand side, you've got BMT doing red. The damage is done there, but Kings are happy. They get the Fury for Genetics dying. That's a good W for them.
All right, I'm learning about this Caster's Curse stuff. I said he can't walk into the Gold Fury,
Yeah,
and
he
then
can.
he does. Walks right in and steals it with his ultimate. Generally, ESET support, not really doing much damage with that ultimate. It's not like it has any magical power at all. So just well-timed by him, and nobody there to CC him out of that ultimate as well. So poor zoning from a Raw there.
This is good play from the Kings, though. Taking down the tier 1 tower after that because they chase Genetics, defending the left-hand side. Aurora goes for an ult in mid, won't find it on Twig, but will try and pick up SOT, who's forced to ult. But Twig is very low, and a great Eagles rally from Variety keeps him alive. Twig will survive thanks to the support out of Variety, as 4 members of the Titans now fall back.
Perfect timing. We saw Variety last game, perfect timing ult to escape that Mercury ult, and then perfect timing this time after that long channeled Amaterasu ult in the mid lane. So just playing this Bologna ult very well for himself.
Well, I do believe we got a replay of that little Gold Fury fight where we saw King steal it away. I believe it was Circle of Protection that stole it. We should be able to have a little look back and see exactly how it is here. And you just basically, Genetics walks in, drops 2 abilities and walks away again for the most part, but he does die through it. But it makes things better for the Kings. They're in the lead again, not in kills, but gold.
Yeah, it's just 1,000 though. It's really not much. It just keeps them up to that point where they feel like they're going to be strongest, and that comes in these team fights. That ESET ultimate, big ultimate, will be strong in these group team fights, but then you're contesting with a big ultimate on the side of Paul as well. So we haven't seen too much action out of Paul. He did get some kills in the early game, and then I believe he got that one on genetics. So he's scaling to the point, triple ring build at this point, he is scaling to the point where he will have good DPS.
Oh, Paul just jukes the Unchained from Twig there, stepping towards him rather than backwards towards the tower line, which isn't even there at the moment. That's a bigger factor for me, is how the Kings managed to take that tier 1 in mid, which does kind of put Paul on the back foot a little bit more here.
It does. He's a risky god, you know. He only has his beads to rely on, and defensively, apart from that ultimate, which is a very long cooldown. So if maybe Captain Twig can get some action on Paul, force that ultimate, maybe force those beads, they should be able to kill him relatively easy if they can chase him down. But I think he'll need Variety's help with that.
Well, Layers' rage isn't too far behind where it was now after the last little
Feels good
engagement.
for him.
3 stacks on that, almost at the 5. Red buff now being taken down, given over towards BMT in the mid lane on this AMC. Not really spoke about the AMC yet, but damage output, not the biggest so far, which is that a surprise?
I mean, yeah, he has a lot of poke damage, so you would expect him to be higher on the charts, but realistically, he's just there for pressure, right? He was the reason that Paul couldn't rotate to that first blue buff. He's probably the reason that mid lane tower is down, and then it just has to wait until team fights where he can do Hunter things.
Nice little time for right there. Just using that shield bash to just jump away from the dashes that came through, using the audio cues once again. And just frustrating Layers if he can on that right-hand side.
Yeah, he's playing well, and that's the experience that some of these veteran players like Variety have on this LAN environment. They have very low ping in the studio here, so they're able to react very well. So if you're on point in your mindset and your reactionary timing, then you can be very, very much on point in-game as well.
Still a bit behind though, Variety. As you can see, SOT level 15, and that wave clear for Variety means he's still only... Actually, tell a lie, he was just hitting level 15 off that. Layers at level 13, matching the pace of Twig, but a bit more involved with 004. As a slash line involved in all 4 kills, but more importantly, this Olaron in the mid lane, 3-0-1 so far.
Yeah, speeding his way towards that late game Olaron that is that always threat. So 3 rings, so he will have a lot of DPS. Mercury will have a lot of DPS. Amaterasu enhances her team's DPS, and then obviously you have a Hunter as well. So if they get the chance to pull any of these objectives, I imagine we'll see them melt very quickly. And honestly, Captain Twig and Variety could melt just as quick.
Well, here we go again. Pyromancer under threat from the Kings. Last time Titans came in and caused problems. This time Kings will get it. Sonic Boom charged by Layers. Can he find an angle on the carries? Changes his mind though. Could have looked at Netrod and Twig, but would have been very deep there with only Aurora in backup. Instead, they'll back away, and Titans just a little bit too late to that fight. The Kings got their first fall.
Kings making some quick calls. They are feeling confident, maybe a little bit of desperation as well. They are up against the ropes, 4 kills down, but they managed to keep a gold lead just from their macro play. That's what we compliment them on all the time, is their sufficient macro play. They're just very good at getting these Scorpions, these objectives, but now they have to walk towards a gold Fury. So Cyclone Spin will be there this time, Netroid will be there this time, and we get a true 5v5.
Well, both of these teams will move on to tomorrow, win or lose here today. However, one of them will have to play a back-to-back to make it to the finals. The other one will be waiting in finals from again. So there is a chance we get to see a rematch of this series if things work out in favor of the losing team. Just depending on who they play tomorrow is going to be the interesting factor.
That's the beauty of these long tournaments, these lower bracket runs, and we get to see teams really come back and revise their strategy in these longer days. And it's also just tiring for some players as well. So they really just rely on their fundamentals, and we get to see some really raw plays out of players. So things like massive team fights just going the way of one team just because one player was out of position because they're just tired after a long day. It's just this Masters brings a whole nother element to this gameplay.
And now, as we watch this game on it, closing in on 18 minutes here, just looking, the secondary relics are available now for Genetics and Aurora. Aurora just hit level 12. Do you expect a blink maybe out of Aurora here for more initiation, or do you go for more survivability for the team?
Yeah, I mean, Layers hasn't been able to use his blink yet. Maybe he's kind of just waiting for Aurora to be able to make space for him. So maybe a blink would be good for him too. But then we're lacking some team fight relics, and that's when you start to get in a dangerous position. Are we just going to lose this based on relics? I think Ankh could be decent against the
Isis.
ESET,
Was it a lot of natural system? Isis, I'm going to keep saying that.
No problem. But you could also see something like Sunder if they're really trying to blow up the front line. You could see Frenzy if they're trying to blow up an objective. So he's kind of got any choice.
Love this way from Titans though. They push that Trebuchet down mid, put the pressure there, and then immediately rotate to the left-hand side and strip away the Primal. That's the power that Titans have had. So far, Titans get Gold Furies and all the Furies in the world, and Kings will get the Pyros. That's
They're
what
getting
they've
Scorpions
kind of
too,
decided,
so
right?
that kind of adds up and evens out in a way. So we're seeing completely even gold at the top there, despite Tartarus Titans.
Twig's in trouble here on the right-hand side, has to beads away and leap. Aurora going to give chase, look for the double jump into the TC chain that's there. Beautiful knock-up after the fray, and now Variety in there and out of there, has to beads away. Paul stunned in place from Genex over the wall, which really prevented some damage on Variety there. Genex doing a really good job of just like poking, saying, no, Paul, you won't play. No, Paul, you won't play. But the FG could be looked at here.
They have the DPS for it. We're talking about reaction
Always fast.
timings. And
Always fast.
Now it's time for Big Men Things and Genetics to really get in here. Variety, no ultimate.
Neither does Aurora at the same time as the Sanctuary field goes down. Big Man takes the focus point from SOT. All the while, Netro peeling back the other way, and BMT got isolated and alone. Big disarm from Variety there, but it won't be enough to prevent SOT finding BMT. The FG is still alive, however.
They have the DPS for it still, all 5 alive.
Sustain,
Not a lot of sustain, but it is an all-around heal, which gives him protections as well, so he's able to stay confident in this. Amaterasu will increase the DPS as well. Variety using his ultimate up down is very surprising.
But then gets pulled back into the fray. Now Variety surrounding. Big bludgeon comes through. Genetics and Netro trying to support, but Netro low on mana there. Could cause a bit of a problem for them to continue the aggression. However, Titans, their health bars are not as high as they'd like, and the respawn from Twig was enough to force them back.
Okay, I'm actually impressed by Variety there, just doing enough to force them out and poke them off that Fire Giant and just buying time for his team to respawn. Captain Twig now back up so he can defend that Fire Giant if needed as well, and that's why Titans back out of there. One thing we missed as well is that upgraded starter item on Amaterasu, so a lot of raw DPS coming out from her as well. I would have expected it to be a Boomba's Hammer, but I guess she doesn't really need the cooldown. She's just going for the auto attack damage. Completely able to just outbox anybody she fights right now. A lot of health on that item, and then it uses your health to do magical damage to enemies.
Yes,
so
please.
Very impressive. So.
Yes, please. That makes a lot of sense to see that being picked up here. We'll see how it translates. It will bring on the healthier targets, which, if anything, you're really looking at Variety more than anybody else.
A big ultimate from Layers on and completely peeling them off that Fire Giant straight away, but a great
But it
reaction
might
from
die
Captain
for
Twig.
it. Has to beads away the Ragnarok as a raw clears
Done
on
his
some
job.
wards in the back, and you're happy with that.
Yeah, Layers had to force them off that Fire Giant. I don't think Titans were ready at all. Layers saw an opportunity to go for it, forces them off it completely. Does cost his beard and his ultimate. A good reaction from Captain Twig, but yeah, back to an even standing and a 5v5 once again.
Less of a threat, though, from Twig around this next FG, potentially, at least until
Mercury
that ultimate comes back up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bigger thing of, like, if we see Titans aggress onto it, who dives on? And again, it's probably going to have to be Variety. But the ward battles have begun around the Fire Giant pit. 3 carries on the side of Titans with this Mercury jungle. As you said, it'd be pretty quick, but Genex thrown into a dangerous field down into the Sanctuary field, and he's already dead before he even lands down. Cyclone aggresses on towards Variety. Netroid now rotating him from the mid lane too, as the FG under threat.
Let's see if they can actually stay on this FG. I don't think it's easy with Tusky in the back and Fenrir jumping in as well. He doesn't have Fenrir ult, so he's not too strong here, but Amaterasu able to outbox anybody in the back here, not threatened at all.
BMT is going to fall down to Cyclone Spin, and Paul collapsing on him. Variety was trying to peel away, but can't do so. Tusky did get into the fray for Netroid a little bit to slow down the FG, but the damage is done with 2 members of Kings now being dead. Health bars are low, though, on the
Close.
Titans. Variety coming in, disarming, slowing down the damage. SOT on zone duty, keeping Twig and Netroid at bay. Netroid again out of mana. Meanwhile, Variety's taking on the world, and the world just crushes him. But in doing so, it prevents the FG again.
It's really just a 1-for-1 solo troll zoning the enemy team. Variety doing his best to get them off that Fire Giant, and it once again does enough damage. Up downs in that ultimate, trades his life, trades his health bar to get them off that Fire Giant and delay the game again. So we're seeing just back to a normal standing. The relics come off cooldown, and I guess lucky for Genetics because he was the one that got picked up at that start of that fight when he didn't have beads. A great catch from Aurora. But again, Titans can't capitalize on just one pick. They need more than that.
We did mention a little bit about how Oliver was playing the mid 3-0-5, but look at Aurora as well. 0-0-9, the best slash line you can have as a support, really.
A lot of these MVPs of Worlds and stuff like that, you give them a trophy but forget about their support players and the amount of setup
I
that they're
watch it,
getting.
sadly, and I have to watch it get given to other people all the time.
That's right.
Genex up, down, pressured again. The damage from Cyclone is just too much. He will peel himself away, but it cost him his beads, it cost him his other relic, as well as his ultimate, and his life is still going to fall down too. 10-1 now for the Titans, as once again, you're looking at Variety and
Can you
Twig
do it again?
to stop them one more time. In goes Twig. He's on the forefront, waiting for Variety to join him. Fire Giant just getting towards half health now. Netroid, better angle this time, joining the rest of his team. Remember, Tusky will jump around that pit if given the angle, and they jump it on Paul. Ragnarok forced, and Ragnarok looking for a target, picks up a roll, brings him into the team, and Aurora goes down. Fire Giant off the fray as Tusky does work, but Variety does fall down to Paul, who front line for such a long time there. And now with 2 members dead on the Kings, the Titans go back to it again.
Aurora went down, but it makes enough space for them to pull this objective. They have a lot of sustain, and they cannot get past Cyclone Spin right now. We're just seeing a Mercury and Amaterasu do the Fire Giant while they carry zone. Not something we're used to seeing, but it worked very effectively there.
3,500 gold plus for Titans now, but the Fire Giant, more importantly, around the waist. The pressure relieved on the right-hand side of the map. And it's time to start stripping back these towers now, reducing the overall defensive nature Kings have in their base.
Now we start to look at what team can siege and how they do it. I think the siege defense from... Is he going to steal this?
Well, hold on a second, let's find out. You were talking about Kings do secure it, and then straight after he goes on Netroid.
Oh, Genetics.
And turns on towards Genetics, who's bursted down again. And Ice isn't having a game. You saw Genetics' face there. He's having a rough time, 0-6 and 0.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
When he starts like that, you've got to play it aggressive, though. You have to as ISIS on this comp, in my opinion.
That wasn't a bad call either. You know, the enemy team is just backing to spend their gold after that Fire Giant. You wouldn't expect them to be there so far, but Amaterasu and Jingwei very fast out of base.
And
Another
Fed
pick.
Jingwei now at full build, pretty much going to start to slaughter that. Tell a lie, not even full build, only 5 items.
That's all she
deep.
needs.
And now onto the tier 2 tower in the mid lane, left-hand side, because the SOT just proxy farming some minion waves to keep the pressure rolling there for the minions. And now the focus on this mid Phoenix.
All they've got is really the beads to defend them.
Sonic
Maybe
boom
Netroid
connects
can
with
get a decent
Netroid,
ult.
but straight away the beads comes into play. Tell a lie, it was the Artemis Tusky that denied it. Now Leia's trapped on the left-hand side, but all the wild Titans assaulting the middle Phoenix. No minions there, though, means it's taken a long time to go down here. And the CC chains and disarms are causing a couple of problems.
They kind of had to use everything to buy that time, though. That does give Genetics the opportunity to come back up. I can't imagine he'll live too long in this front line, though.
They're looking at Genetics one more time, knocking him up in the air, but Cyclone stepping forward to support, gets eaten alive by Netroid, and Variety's trying to give chase, but Aurora does a good bit of zoning work. Middle Phoenix still alive, is now SOT still trapped in the base, and Eagle Rally connects on 2, but no backup there for Variety to continue that chase, and eventually Solo or Troll will exit stage right.
Honestly, if I hadn't said it, I wouldn't even realize if that Genetics spawned. He came out of base and died instantly, straight back to the gray
They're
screen.
really brutalizing
No
it
chance
now.
to farm at all. Not enough physical defense right now to stand in front of the Mercury, not enough physical defense to stand in front of the Jingwei, and he's just getting crit down, so he needs to work on this Spectral, but he's so far behind at this
Oh,
point.
he just sold it. What's
He
he
just
going to go for again? Oh, wait, no, he had Kasari, sold it, and then bought
He's desperate.
Kasari again.
He doesn't know what he's doing right now, yeah. He's basically in a really bad position. He's got his beads so he can get out of that CC, but he just can't stand in front of any of that damage right now. So it's only Captain Twig and Variety that are able to actually face that back line. Genetics is relegated to just peeling at this point, but he keeps getting picked off.
Just too far forward, or like too far forward after the initial engagement, I guess, is what's happening. But there's only so much you can really do and stay in range here. Cyclone, though, 5-0-6 now. And he's really feeling confident on Jingwei, as you expect. When his ultimate's up, you can take on 3 or 4, and he's doing that right now. 6-7-1 crit towards the back of Twig's head. We'll keep him in check.
Yeah, if you need confidence, just play a Hunter, see the amount of damage that you're doing, and then you'll feel confident after that.
That doesn't work for me, because I do that, hit 2 autos, and then 5 of them collapse, and my team's farming a
Well,
back
see,
harpy.
Cyclone Spin did the smart thing there. He was hitting the Fenrir, and then as soon as he sees the
He
beats
ran
come
away.
out, he's going to walk
You're
away.
telling me I
So,
should have
yeah.
run away, okay.
Yes, sometimes that's the way it has to be. Jingwei very effective at doing that herself, which is why we see her in the meta so much right now. She's a very safe hunter, but does all of the damage that she needs to do.
Well, I definitely felt last game it was a bit more obvious that the Titans were going to win. At the moment, though, that middle Phoenix staying up for me, Ro, kind of gave a little bit of hope for the Kings here on the defensive duties, because Titans did not play that very well. It's kind of obvious where their engagements are going to come from, I feel like.
But also, it's just early as well, and the mid Phoenix generally being one of the harder ones to siege. Netroid is always able to blow his ultimate, and that will force the enemy team off for at least one wave. So they're able to do that, and then by the time that was over, Genetics came out of base and kind of traded his life to
It's a
delay more time
tarp!
as well.
It's a tarp, Netroid! Oh, no, my God, they didn't see Netroid as he opened that door. I tell you what, if he opened the door and he saw them people there, that's not an Uber delivery you want, that's for sure.
Not at all. I mean, he's lost the speed buff, so it's taking it right off his porch right there. So they'll come back to the Fire Giant. It won't be, it might be EFG by the time they do it. It might even be best for them to delay till EFG so they can actually push down these Phoenixes easily. They have a little bit of time to play with, however. They might go for a tier 2. They'll get this Pyromancer and able to position around that Fire Giant again, ward it up, and be ready for another 5v5, which I can't imagine Genetics really wants to be in right now.
Well, the levels have started to catch up now for the Kings. The only real discrepancy is in supports, which is it's kind of standard for me that the losing team will have a supporters play 2 levels behind overall. There's normally like a 2-level swing between supports for the most part.
We've seen
But
double that.
With 071, it's going to be a pretty awkward situation for him to find the farm too, because he wants his other carries to really get the gold.
raw blink traded for Captain
the idea.
Twig's blink. That's fair enough. I don't think he really needs it too much. He has the double jump. I mean, both of them have the double jump, I suppose.
If anything, Aurora wins because he's got lower cooldown on his.
That is true. So
Big
he'll be able to
dubs.
aggress sooner than Captain Twig will be able to, and maybe we'll be able to use that around that Fire Giant coming up.
I'm joking, it won't matter at all. Because
We'll
by the
see.
time we see them group up again for that, FG's dead and they're on the Phoenix line and everyone's full relic.
It's almost up now, so they might just pull it straight away. It doesn't look like Kings even want to
Not a
defend
chance,
this one.
dude. Yeah, you can see they've sent 3 members to the left-hand side here, realizing
Titan should wait.
there is also a trebuchet over there, and I guess they're worried about the initial siege, but you don't like this call?
No, I would have preferred just wait 1 more minute. Maybe they
Yeah.
just want to push straight away. They think they can win without an EFG, but normally I'd say wait there. It's just a minute. You can just hang around. You didn't
I mean, it's a
even need
big
to be at
buff
the Fire
too,
Giant
right?
yet.
It's a big change.
It really is. So, I mean, it's surprising, but honestly, maybe they just don't want to fight King's late game right now. They just want to end the game sooner rather than later. They are very strong, so they're feeling confident regardless.
Titans are splitting the difference here. 2 up mid lane and 3 on the right-hand side, I should say. Aurora going to lead in the charges. Variety tries to zone away the 2 in this middle area. Now Captain Twig comes in, looks towards Layers. Layers forced to beat away. Eats 2 punches to the back of his head. Does Twig on his exit. Sonic Boom charge. Don't think it'll get used. Pressure relieved on the right-hand side for a second or two as Cyclone starts clearing up camps. And now SOT in on this middle Phoenix.
You can see that animosity doing damage to the Phoenix there as well. So quite a lot of damage coming out from on the structures from Solo or Troll. And I like the move to force Bologna to stay into the mid lane. So these 2 hunters on the right side of the map do not get disarmed. So we're seeing both Phoenixes go down at the same time.
The middle is starting to whittle down slowly, and every time you see a rotation from BMT, you see a bit more poke towards the right-hand side too. Circle of protection now down for Genetics. That's 2 ultimates down on the side of the Kings here, and still Titans with everything up.
Yeah, they're just trading ultimates for time. All they want is this Fire Giant buff to tick away. But this is why
Long
I
time.
said they should have the EFG, because both of these Phoenixes probably would have been down if they had that EFG buff by now.
Sonic Boom being charged again by Lay. Still looking for a play in towards this mid lane. Twig and Variety stepping up, trying to keep SOT at bay. SOT now tanking the Phoenix, and does so. He does have that Emperor's Armor. You saw Doug show us off a little bit earlier on, reducing that damage, and that separation opened the door for Titans to take out right side with the Sanctified Field.
Yeah, and we're talking about trading ults for time. Olaron just able to drop his ult and get that Phoenix relatively easy. Yeah, exactly. Able to get that Phoenix very easily. Now they walk away. The 2, you know, I mean, I'm surprised to see them siege the right Phoenix. I guess they just wanted to play as fast as possible. Now they go over to the left Phoenix, and it'll still be fine. They just wait for these right Phoenix and mid Phoenix, these right lane and mid lane minions to push up, and they can threaten and end at this point. This time they don't have the E set on their team, so they may have to be a little careful, but the Olaron plays in much the same way, where they can just drop the ultimate, full commit to the Titan, and DPS it down as soon as possible. One important point to make though, Titan cannot be crit, and a lot of their damage is crits, so it mostly will be just normal auto attack damage, and they can still melt it down pretty quickly.
At least the Titan can do something, man. Jeez.
Yeah.
He's such a waste of space, that guy. He just sits there at the end of the game, and you're like, please. But,
Something.
you know, it's going to be that way for different reasons. I do want to talk about Titans that are looking very likely to be moving on to finals tomorrow.
Yep.
Did you expect that coming into these 2 weeks? Did you expect to see Titans there with how they, like, semi-struggled, I would say, towards the end?
Honestly, no. We had a seeding tournament for a reason,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
it made Dragons and Bolts look like the 2 top teams in the world for a reason. So, I mean, I guess we had a patch since then, so it's all thrown up in the air. We could have had breakthrough SCC teams, but it's just been a great tournament so far. And so far, Kings this morning played a very calm and collected playstyle. I think they've panicked a little bit in this set, but it looks like Titans just know how to press their buttons.
Watch the lane from SOT and Layers coming around this right-hand side, looking to ult on in. Aurora going to try and force some beads early, and does so on Variety there only. The rest of the team still fine. I tell a lie, Genex's beats also down. And you can see SOT just trying to will these minions in towards the Titan room and cause people to defend. But if they come back to defend, they're going to lose the left-hand Phoenix too. A good play from SOT yet again today. Looking MVP for me so far with how this series has gone. Still, though, Kings, hold up.
SOT just making room for his team. He's able to give Layers an opportunity to ult in that left lane because the enemy team is looking mid.
And you can look at like Cyclone and Layers both dashing in, aggressive, trying to force them back. And oh my god,
Couldn't even see the damage
where did the
numbers.
B disappear to? Yes, even the game couldn't read the damage was that much. It just deleted. That was like a Thanatos ult, if anything.
Now, they still have the Olaron ult, so it's up to them when they want to pull this trigger. If they just want to drop that ult, fight in it, then they can do that, but the ADCs need to split up, otherwise they're going to get disarmed by Variety.
Look at Twig, though, losing half his health already. Aurora pulled in and now gets away again. Sanctified Field down.
Titan.
Variety just going to go to Eagles of Rally to try and slow down the pressure. And its body block city needs to happen, but it won't be enough as the Tartarus Titans move on tomorrow's finals. 15-3, a 2-0 series up against the Kings. some people might not have expected that based off what we saw earlier on.
Honestly, I didn't. I thought we were seeing Kings in the finals almost for sure after we saw them this morning. But Titans have just been learning at every step of this tournament, evolving this meta. We saw them with 3 Hunters.
Yeah.
Now we're seeing them play a lot of Ola on mid. They're first picking Mercury, Amaterasu, and then Ura, and then Amaterasu and Solo Troll. He's just kind of been on the MVP role, in my opinion, in completely different styles as well. So what a tournament from him so far.
A little bit sleeper, though, if you think about it. When I say sleeper, Titans have been sleeper here because looking at how they've played, they were in the finals of the World Championships. FaZe wasn't the greatest from them, but this meta seems to have kind of trajected them in this right direction.
They also just seem to be great at these Masters or playoffs events. They won 2 last year, and like you said, getting to the finals of Worlds. They just, once it gets to this point and the meta becomes really, you know, this tournament meta where every team is changing every day and every set, they seem to come out on top every time.
Well, we still got one more set to go, but before we do that, we've got the amazing Mifflin to break down this set. Hopefully he's got some juicy bits of information that he saw in that set.
I guess I'm chopped liver. I don't exist. So amazing Mifflin, you break it down. I'll go.
Man, I've got 2 Brits setting me up for a hard desk. All right, awesome. Yeah, I have to echo the sentiment of Ro there. I mean, SOT has been just on a tear. This Amaterasu establishing so much pressure throughout the game, early rotations dominating in this match, and well, Hindu also breaks it down. This is a meta that fits the Tartarus Titans very, very well. They love going for these slower-paced games where the Camelot Kings are getting pulled into this, hey, we got to get something rolling for us. We got to do something on the map. And the Tartarus Titans say, well, we don't. We're waiting. And I suppose we'll wait on our side of the map. And if you come over here, you cross the line, you go into no man's land. And that's exactly what happens yet again. The Tartarus Titans, with incredibly patient play, are able to set themselves up for phenomenal late-game team fights. But that's not without phenomenal mechanical plays behind them. As we already highlighted, SOT, of course, having one of his best performances at an event so far in his career, and has continued to do so on this Amaterasu. Layers finding multi-man ultimates with the Sonic Boom every single time. And Paul, who has very quickly become the punching bag of the league in that everybody in the league's got a target on his back, has found a god in Olarun that can just say, all right, well, run me down. I'll simply sanctify these fields, and you will be moving just much, much slower. The Tartarus Titans, top to bottom, are just looking like a squad that is going to be incredibly difficult to beat.
Yeah, and, you know, we said during the picks and bans phase that both of these teams drafted comps that were just, we're going to sit and wait until the late game, but when one of them is just better at doing that, Camelot Kings had nothing really left in the tank to fight. Tartarus Titans come in with just so much momentum, I feel like, and now they are the first team to land in the finals of Smite Masters.
Yeah, the Tartarus Titans, I mean, this isn't even a game where it's, hey, we're just going to wait, we're going to wait. It was the Tartarus Titans find this one opportunity that propel them into the lead, and when the Tartarus Titans have a lead, they push the envelope. They will continually force the enemy team to answer difficult questions. Are you willing to take a disadvantage fight on this Pyromancer? Or are you going to let us go and build our lead further? Are you going to take an engagement inside of your Tier 1 tower? It's not worth a whole lot. Are you sure you want to fight here and potentially lose your life? Well, the Tartarus Titans say yes, and they will take those fights, and they will force these difficult situations onto the Camelot Kings and anybody that lines up against them. 21,000 damage from Solo Troll, topping the lobby outside of Netroid. Put up 27, nearly 30,000 damage on the other side. That's difficult to do. I know it's a meme like, hey, he's a Soul Lander, subtract about 5,000 damage from it, and you've got a more clear representation of what he was doing in the team fight, but I'd argue there wasn't a whole lot of boxing in that laning phase, and SOT got a lot of his damage in all of these team fights. The dazzling offensives, the initiations, the chase downs, just beautiful from this Amaterasu.
Which is, of course, exactly what we like seeing from Army, right? This is exactly what this god wants to do, and I think SOT did that perfectly. But this is what we were talking about a minute ago. The Tartarus Titans now find themselves in the grand finals, while the Camelot Kings, they haven't been knocked out of the tournament by any stretch. They have made it into that semis tomorrow up against the winner of the next match, the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons. That's what we got next coming up, and one of these two teams will be knocked out of the tournament, full stop, Mifflin. And honestly, after their performance against the Tartarus Titans, Jade Dragons were looking a little bit shaky, and you could say the same thing for the Bolts this morning up against the Kings.
Yeah, I feel like the Dragons are still trying to solidify what it is they want their identity to be in 9-5. Double Hunter compositions I've quickly turned around on. I feel like that is probably some of the peak performance you can get at the pro level. Triple Hunter compositions, it's getting a little bit more ethereal, a little bit more muddy in whether or not that's actually the direction the meta has taken. If the Jade Dragons want to continue down that style, I'm sure they'll hone it to the absolute peak that it can be, but I'm not fully convinced on it just yet.
Well, we'll have to see if the Dragons and the Bolts can get over that wobbliness and find themselves into that semifinals. But for now, we're going to go to a quick break.